What's going on, YouTube? We're back at it for another gun build video, and today we're finally working on that STG Overpowered. Yeah, I've got to say so, to be honest. It's a fast killer, and with the vital proficiency, it just makes it even more deadly. Very accurate. Not exactly the fastest rate of fire, but the damage it's packing at the rate of fire it does have, it's a deadly one. Now, coming into the Warzone Pacific integration, I can definitely see this being something that, a lot of bots are going to use. It's extremely accurate. It doesn't have the slowest rate of fire, and the damage is pretty decent. And if this transfers with the same damage and accuracy, arguably, it's going to be one of those meta weapons for sure, if not just viable at that point. Now, this being one of those that you can kind of test out inside of Warzone right now. I haven't really played around with it, but I know for a fact that you can't exactly build out the the best loadout for it, considering all we can use is the blueprints versions of it. I've seen some other people talk about it, but at the same point, right now, the damage and I guess accuracy that it has inside of Warzone right now is not going to correlate to what it will in Pacific Warzone, considering it's being nerfed inside of Warzone to pretty much balance out with the rest of the weapons currently in the current version of Warzone. So in the coming future, we will see a few differences. It could be more deadly, more accurate, even more mobility, who knows. Well, we'll see in the coming future. But let's get into the attachments, and we got some gameplay for you to showcase how well this weapon can do. And when it comes to the muzzle, I went with recoil booster, just for the simple fact that we don't exactly have the highest rate of fire. Just give it that a little bit of fire rate added onto it, just to give it a little bit more of that DPS possibility. Now, you will be cutting down a little bit of the horizontal accuracy. For me personally, this is, as accurate as it needs to be, especially just in Vanguard right now. Later on, once we get into the Warzone Pacific integration, I may change this up. Obviously, we'll more than likely be going for silencers, kind of help with that accuracy on one of those, or if anything, F8 stabilizer, just to increase that maximum damage range and give it a little bit more accuracy to it. This is what I would choose if you felt like it was still a little bit too much to control when it comes to the recoil, but it's all up to your personal preference on that one. For me, recoil booster was all I needed. When it came down to the barrel, I went with the VDD 760 millimeter 05B. Just gives us that high accuracy and control, reduced scope, sway, and gun bob, and a little bit more of that damage range. And I can see this being one of the barrels that you'd use inside of Pacific Warzone as well, if not possibly trying to go for a hipfire build with the cross neck 220 millimeter rapid, get that 705 rounds per minute at the cost of substantial recoil control going down, but we can mitigate that with some certain other attachments. But for right now, this is all you'll really need. It's going to be perfect for long, close, and medium range. Pretty much got all the bases covered with this one. It's a well-rounded weapon. And when it comes to your optics, it's all up to your personal preference. I chose to use the SLATE reflector, just clean, crisp, little red dot, easy to keep on target. Now the stock, wasn't too pleased with the mobility just from the cross nick, so I went with a remove stock, gave it 2 to that movement speed, and a little bit more of that ADS and sprint to fire. Now we do cost at some accuracy and recoil control from this, but like I said before, this is something I could control quite easily. But if you want it to be even more of a laser, obviously the VDD 34S weighted is going to be the one to go for that recoil control accuracy and that flinch resistance. I have noticed that we will be getting a reduction to flinch resistance with the remove stock, and it can be more troublesome in certain moments, but a lot of times you can bring it back down. Now, proficiency vital, obviously, just increasing that area of critical hit, so that upper torso is going to be essentially all that headshot damage right there. If you wanted something else, I'd probably go with sleight of hand or focus, just for that flinch resistance. Reload speed isn't the shortest, but it isn't the longest at the same point. That's why I just go with vital. It seems too critical for this build itself, just to make this even more deadly, faster TTK overall. But sleight of hand could be a good choice. When it comes to kit, obviously fully loaded, you want the maximum ammo supply. You want to be able to use that dead drop to pretty much call in multiple kill streaks of whatever you have. Possibly you're about to die. Keep that kill streak that you had going into the next life. Just having all the ample ammunition you could possibly need. Now when it comes to the grip, I went with polymer grip. I really enjoyed this one. As you saw before with the remove stock, we had a negative to flinch resistance. Going to kind of mitigate with this attachment here, getting that 2 to flinch resistance and accuracy and recoil during sustained fire, giving us all of the accuracy we really need to control this recoil. Now if you wanted to go for a little bit more of the recoil control, maybe it's going up, or it's possibly something that where is it, too much of that horizontal bounce for you, grooved grip, great option. Now we will be cutting down to ADS speed and sprint to fire with this, but that aim walking movement speed can be a big help. I did notice more than a few times that I felt a bit sluggish while I was ADS'd. This can kind of compensate for that, but I just felt the flinch resistance was better than the ability to move in some of those moments, especially if you're playing small maps like DOS House and Shipment. Can be a big help. When it comes to the magazine, you want the last one. You want that .30 Russian short 30 round. We are bumping that damage all the way up to 41, almost at the same level as our vital damage. Now I'm kind of irritated that this didn't affect the vital damage, and we will be taking a bit of a rate of fire hit to this. This can have a better rate of fire, as you'll notice if we went over the Curze 45 round drum. We're getting a bit more fire rate, but we're only at 29 rounds, and we're losing an effective damage range. Bullet velocity now is a bit easier to control the recoil with this, bit more of the starting ammo, but for me personally, that damage is just, I mean, it just really complements this weapon well. It's overpowered, and the fact that it's given effective damage range and bullet velocity. If this was a 60 round mag, I'd say, yeah, this is 100% going into Pacific Warzone as top tier, period. You're not going to be able to, or you're not going to want to have to use anything else as that bot slaying weapon, completely accurate. But at that same point, since this is a long range weapon, if it only does go in with 30 rounds, this could be still a strong, viable weapon when it comes to Warzone. That 30 round mag, though, can hinder you, but since we would be using this inside of that with a long range option, or since this would be the long range primary option when it comes to Pacific Warzone, that's pretty much all you're going to need in certain fights like that. If they're closing in, getting in close, you know, obviously you just want to duck back, use that SMG or whatever secondary you're using, kind of combat for that. When it comes to ammo type, since we don't exactly have the fastest rate of fire with this weapon, it's not the slowest, but we want that bullet to hit the target as fast as possible, and that's why we'll go with lengthened, get that bullet velocity in, just so we can make sure that each of our shots can possibly land faster than they would if we didn't have it, and it could mean the difference between winning and losing a gunfight. You could arguably go with hollow point if you're working on those smaller maps and your accuracy isn't the greatest, but for me personally, lengthened worked perfectly with this. When it comes to the grip, I went with the M3 Ready grip. I wanted that ADS speed, I wanted that sprint to fire, and a little bit of that aim walking movement speed. Like I said before, was kind of felt a little bit sluggish whenever I ADS'd, but if you're looking for something that's going to give you a bit more of that recoil control, you want to make this an absolute laser. The M1941 hand stop, great option. Cover both fields of that horizontal and vertical. Or if you're feeling like the vertical's a bit too much, which honestly, I'll tell you right now, it shouldn't be for you. It's going to be the Carver grip though. Unless you just need that straight up horizontal accuracy down, you want that M1930 Strife angled. Also giving us that aim walking steadiness and aiming stability. Great option as well, just at the cost of sprint to fire. Alright guys, that's going to be the weapon, and I don't think I said this before, but you obviously don't have to completely level this weapon to the full level 70 to really get the most effectiveness out of it. If you've been playing, you know, Cold War, Warzone, Modern Warfare, or Vanguard in general, and if you've moved through the Season Pass, you've more than likely already got the blueprints ready to make this weapon completely overpowered. This is one of the blueprints that you'll get from it, the Rat-a-tat. Completely overpowered. Now, I can't remember whether or not this blueprint came from the Battle Pass or if it was a pre-order bonus, but you'll get a couple of other blueprints through the Battle Pass as well. And pretty much at that point, that's all you're going to need. By the time you get to level 50 or 60, you're essentially done. You've got all the attachments you'll really need, unless you're looking for absolute recoil control when it comes to something like the VDD-34S weighted. but honestly, you don't really need to go all that distance. It's not going to be necessary. There's plenty of other options to kind of help mitigate with that recoil control. And it's more than likely going to be a strong competitor when it comes to the meta inside of Warzone Pacific. Can't wait to try it out. Hopefully it's not too overpowered. That'd be an irritating moment. I could almost see this being like the Krig 6 going in. If you saw that back in Warzone Season 4, 5, I've lost count. It all blends together for me at this point. But if you remember the Krig 6 in its heyday, at the strongest that it was, this would more than likely be comparable in this portion. But on that note, let's get straight into the gameplay, and hope you guys have a good one. God damn it. Dude, that's ridiculous. Some of these shots, I just can't tell. Like maybe the slow rate of fire that kind of stops me in certain moments. What kind of shooting is that? Too bad.